So I'll just introduce myself. My name is Niki Stepanian, and I'm one of the clinicians for the counseling team. And I've been a therapist for 9 years, I believe, yeah, 9 years, sorry, and been in private practice for about 8. And I've been working with the counseling team for about 3 years. So I'm down in Rancho Cucamonga, so down south of you guys. And this is where I have my office. That I see clients for the counseling team for. And then I also teach some classes for them, usually more to fire because I'm married to a firefighter. So being a fire family, kind of get all the, just the unique lifestyle and the challenges and things that come up due to, being married to a first responder who doesn't have a typical 8-to-5 job. So with that being said, I think that everything that's going on right now is kind of new for everybody, whether you're a first responder family or not. And we're going to kind of go over some general things that I think that most people are experiencing. And then we're going to kind of narrow it down to more specific kind of challenges or concerns that are more like fire or first responder related. So okay, let's see. And thank you guys so much for being patient. Like, I'm not used to teaching a class like this. And it's all very, very new to me. I've only done Zoom a couple of times and it was more as a participant, and I just called in. So to actually kind of orchestrate it, I'm learning as we go. So thank you for your patience with this. Okay, let's see. Okay, so kind of, what I was mentioning, just this is such an unprecedented, I think, event that our country's never seen and most of us have never experienced or been through. And, it's because it's so different and unprecedented, we really don't have a frame of reference for what's happening and when we don't have a frame of reference for something, it's very anxiety producing. And that's a very normal reaction to have. It's scary. It's scary because we don't have anything to look back on and say, oh, okay, well, when this happened, this is how I dealt with it, or we got through that. It's the unknown is always very scary to a lot of people. With that, I was just going to kind of go over some like normal reactions on what to expect. And so, of course, being anxious, is super normal. And there's a lot of things that I think a lot of us can be anxious about right now. Our own health, the health of others, especially, our firefighter. There might be some resentment or anxiety over having to quarantine or having others be fearful of us because we have to quarantine. That potential time off work, layoffs, financial stress. Not everyone has the ability to work from home. I know as far as our firefighters go, they're still going to work. I'm not sure exactly how your department is going, but I know some departments, they're working more right now. Other departments, not as much, but for the most part though, your guys' the first responder jobs are pretty, as far as stability wise is the same. As far as going to work. But for other professions, and so for the significant others who work, there's a lot of changes happening. I mean, I know for myself, like, I'm not used to doing this. I'm used to going to my office and seeing clients, and when I teach a class, I do them in person, and it's just a completely different setup. And so now I'm working from home, I'm doing telehealth, I've got a little desk in my room because it's the only private spot in the house, and my kids are home, like all of yours, I'm sure. And, trying to balance out adjusting to just a new way of doing things. And then for others, they may not have the opportunity to work from home. So there could be some additional stress in that, maybe they're furloughed. And then there's that loss of income. So, we're all kind of collectively going through a lot of change right now in different ways that is normal for it to be anxiety producing, let's see. There's what I kind of mentioned, the uncertainty. There's a lot of uncertainty. I think, I know for me, I kind of feel like, all right, well, if you give me a deadline, like if you tell me where the end line is, I can do it, right? So if you tell me, okay, there's 2 more weeks, or there's a month, or I don't know, even like a silly example, like you're working out and it's like, okay, 10 more reps. It's like, okay, I can mentally do that. I can do 10 more reps. But when you don't know where that finish line is, it makes it really hard. It's hard to mentally kind of gather up that strength and go, okay, I can do this, because we don't know where the end is. So it's very normal to feel anxious about that, because it's just that, like, again, that uncertainty. We're not sure how long this is going to go. And so, of course, that's scary and anxiety producing. On top of that, there can be a lot of loneliness, a lot of anger about not being able to just go and do whatever we want. We're not living normal life right now. We can't just go to the movies. We can't go out to dinner. Our kids can't go to school. For some of us, we can't go to work. So it's a feeling of there's a lot beyond our control. And that can get very frustrating, very irritating, and very just build a lot of anger. Being home a lot, being the social distancing, I think we all logically understand why we're doing it for the most part, but it doesn't mean that emotionally it's not having an effect on us. So feeling lonely, being bored, maybe to some extent too. I mean, I know for me, I feel like it's Groundhog's Day every day. I'm like, what day is it? And then I'm like, does it even matter? I mean, I don't know, like Friday, Monday, it all, like, for me, feels the same right now. So some of the things we want to be careful of, them, and we'll go a little bit more into this, is what oftentimes happens is we look for other ways to cope, and we're going to go over some healthy adaptive coping skills, but we just want to be careful of maybe that increased desire to use like alcohol or substances. And I'm not saying that having virtual happy hour is a bad thing. It's not. But you just want to be mindful of how much are you using that. Because this is a very, again, unprecedented time, something that a lot of us have not gone through before. We're trying to figure it out. And sometimes when we're in that kind of vulnerable place of stress, it's easy to kind of go down that path of, well, let me just have, more drinks, or let me turn to some substances. And then we also want to be careful too that we're not kind of slipping into like symptoms of like depression, something like that. And we'll go into that as we move on as well. Okay. Why are we feeling this way? Perception is everything. And, I obviously, I work mostly with first responders, but outside of first responders, I specialize in trauma. And so one thing we know about trauma, one of the things we know, is that it's really how we perceive the incident. And it's one of the biggest things in how it affects us. Like how that experience affects us is how we perceived that experience. And so in some respects, this is not too different from that. And so I'll get into this in a little bit more in a little bit, but if we take this situation that we're all collectively going through right now, and we only focus on the things that we can't control, that's going to affect us a lot more negatively, and it's going to feel a lot worse than if we say, okay, yes, I accept that I can't control these things, but I'm also going to focus on what I can control. Then, that perception really affects how we're able to manage a situation like this. And then we'll get into kind of more of that in a little bit. Okay. Feeling anxious isn't necessarily a bad thing. A little anxiety is actually good. I was a little anxious before I started this, but I feel like a little anxiety kind of keeps me on my toes and helps me think a little clearer. It's kind of like that hypervigilance that a lot of firefighters feel when they're at work, right? A little bit of it is actually a good thing. It helps you think faster, things flow, a little bit of that increased heart rate, blood pressure. But it's when it becomes too much that it starts to create complications and problems for us. And so that's, I think, kind of the point of what we're doing right now, is to manage it so that it doesn't become too much for us, so that we can utilize these tips and tools and maybe, you know, have some different perspective on how to look at things or how to manage or cope. So that way it doesn't start to really negatively affect our functioning, because that's when it really starts to become a problem. When it's interfering with our daily ability to function or interfering with our relationships, that's when, okay, the anxiety is becoming too much. So we want to hopefully try to prevent that. Okay. I'm going to jump into kids for just a minute. I think it's important to remember, I mean, I have kids, my kids are a little older, they're 16 and 19. So I have one that had to move back. She's out of state, she's in Colorado for college, and she had to move home and finish her freshman year here at home with online classes, like a lot of college kids have had to do. And even though they're a little older, you know, how my husband and I perceive and how we react to what's happening, it still affects them. So whether you have small kids, whether you have kids who are starting to become adults, how we are responding to this, they're still watching it and they're still seeing it, and it does affect them. So I think that's really important to keep in mind, that when we're able to manage our own reactions, that role models for them how to do that also. So how do we do that? I like to keep in mind first that their lives have been disrupted also, whether they are in kindergarten or preschool, or like my daughter, or my older daughter who's in college, their lives are also disrupted. They're at home, they're not going to school anymore, they're not seeing their friends, they're learning distance learning, right? So they're learning to do all this stuff online. Maybe if your kids were already homeschooled, that's not as big of an issue for them. But, you know, I think for a lot of us, you know, our kids weren't homeschooled, my kids weren't. And so they're learning how to do this. They're learning how to use Zoom to check in for live classes and virtually turn in work. And, you know, so I know I'm very grateful that my daughter is a freshman in college and that this isn't her senior year, but I have a lot of friends whose kids are graduating this year. You know, there's no prom, there's no grad night. You know, the ones who play spring sports, you know, there's no senior game, there is no graduation ceremony, you know, and I know I'm talking about high school seniors, but, you know, I have some clients who have younger kids, and, you know, there's like the cute little kindergartner who's not going to get their end of the year events, and, you know, their little kindergarten graduation to go to first grade. So there's a lot that they're missing out on also. And then as a family, you know, maybe we've had to cancel vacations, you know, or events that were planned. And we're basically home all day together now. And we're still trying to function in our daily lives, whether it's work, school, but we're trying to do it in this new setting, in this new way. And it can be very, very frustrating. So how do we help them then? I think it's really important as a parent to just validate and normalize what they're feeling. And I think it's okay to let them know that how we're feeling. Like, yes, this is frustrating. This sucks. I have moments where I'm scared too. And letting them know that you're feeling some of those things also, and it's okay. I think that it would be unrealistic to expect for them or us to not have any of those feelings. You know, we're in a situation where all of that is so normal. And so we want to make sure that we're sending the message to our kids, that same message to them, that it's normal. It's normal that they're going to have moments where it feels overwhelming, because it does for me, it does for all of us. And that's okay, you know, but, you know, hopefully we can role model like staying calm and being available for them when they want to talk. And then having age appropriate conversations. Now I know like my kids are older, so they understand more. I can have a very different conversation with them than maybe I could if they were toddlers or if they were 5, 6, 7, younger. So kind of thinking about an age appropriate way of letting them know what's going on. But either way, I think it's important to have that conversation and talk about their own fears and concerns as well. If your kids are a little bit older, so that maybe they're in school and they're probably hearing things, or if they've got smartphones and they're keeping in touch with their friends, they might all be sharing information with each other, so kind of checking in with them and addressing the misinformation. We're all going to get it. And so doing our best to address it for ourselves and for our kids. I think it's really important to not offer any false promises. So in that respect, it's paying attention to how you word things. Maybe instead of saying like, oh, dad is not going to get this. Well, you can't promise that because there's a chance that he could, or that we all could, you're not going to get this. I'm not going to get this. We don't necessarily want to say that. We want to say, we're going to do everything we can to keep ourselves healthy and safe. And that's something you can kind of promise because that's something you actually have control over. And in that essence, helping them focus on what they can control, so whether that's school or helping them keep in contact with their friends. I know one thing I actually just saw it today, so it made me think of it. I saw it this morning, but I've been seeing them lately is birthdays, and they're doing like the drive-by parades, so kind of, I think, coming up with some creative ways for them to stay in touch and for us also to stay in touch with, connected with people, I think is really important. So what can we control? What can we do to stay connected with others? Just as an example. And then I think it's really important to let them know that they're not alone. Like you as a family, you as a parent, you're all in this together. And then collectively, we as a society are all in this together. And it helps to lessen that fear of I'm the only one, it's just me. And, it's that normalizing that larger support feeling that, hey, we're all doing this together, that helps with that reassurance. Okay, so some tips for the whole family. And again, if you guys have questions, like I'm trying to look at the little chat box down in my lower corner. So please feel free to, if you have questions, like type out a question, or even if you have a tip. I mean, I don't presume to know everything. I don't know everything. And I know that every family is different. And so if you have found something that works for you, or something that you found helpful, like please, feel free to type it in, and I'll make sure to, I know everyone can read the chat box, but I'll make sure to bring it out also. Okay, so some things that we can do, playing games with the family. I like this one. It's interesting. I was talking with some of my friends from my husband's department, some of the other wives, and we were talking about like, what are we all doing to kind of get through this? And, I was telling them, I said, having daughters who are older, teenagers, they would normally not be home. I mean, on weekends and after school, they're with their friends, or, they're just, everything is about their social network right now. Or, before this. But now they're kind of forced to be home, which I kind of like, I have to say. It's like one of my positives. I love that my whole family is under one roof. I love that I'm not carrying around that low level of anxiety of what is my daughter doing when she's out of state. I love that they're home, and we've started playing a lot of games together. And we started off with board games, but then the girls have gotten really creative making Kahoot games and, trying to see who knows the most about each family member and things like that. We've been cooking a lot together. In fact, my girls are making dinner right now. They're starting soup for us since it's cold, and I love it. So we're cooking, we're planning meals, we're working out as a family when my husband's home. On the days that he's home, we're going into the garage and doing family workouts. So it's been really fun. So exercising, watching shows, watching movies. Again, I know my kids are older, but Ozark started. And so we've been totally binge watching Ozark and getting caught up with that. So kind of thinking of like some creative things that you can do with your kids, that you could do as a family, to kind of utilize the opportunity that's presenting itself, which is that we're all together. You know, there's minimal distraction. And so so capitalizing on that, I think, is a really, really positive thing that we could be doing right now. Okay, so healthy self-care techniques. So these are things that you can do on your own, but some of them I think are also really good to do with your kids or your family, like meditation. So when we become anxious, it literally affects like a certain part of our brain, right? And that part of the brain controls the nervous systems. So when we have a lot of anxiety, when we have a lot of things going on, it actually can create a dysregulation between our nervous systems, which is what you feel in your body when you're feeling really anxious. You're feeling that dysregulation. So you have a certain nervous system that's being a lot more activated, and it can be very hard to bring that down. So there are things that we can do to help calm that part of the brain that controls those nervous systems and to help regulate it again. Meditation is such an awesome thing that we can do. You know, as a therapist, we're used to talking, and we talk a lot, and we're used to people coming in and wanting to talk. And talking is great, and there's a lot of value in that, but talking doesn't necessarily calm that part of the brain because words don't access that part. So it's called the limbic system, if anyone's interested. But anyway, it's more what we call sensory motor processing that actually accesses that part of the brain and helps to calm it down. So it calms down those nervous systems that it controls. So meditation, yoga, dance, singing, anything that's basically like creative, that you're not talking, but you're using that creative part of your brain to process. Those things all help to calm that part of the brain down and will help to decrease that anxiety that you're feeling. There's some great meditation apps. There's Insight Timer, they've got thousands of guided meditation for free. And these are things that you can do with your kids. I mean, you know, I'll lay down for 10 minutes and listen to a guided meditation before bed. There's another app called Headspace. I know like the Peloton app is offering 90-day free trial for new users, and I love their meditation portion on there. Yoga is awesome. Pull up on YouTube, pull up some yoga for kids, do some yoga with your family. Prayer, you know, if faith is a part of your belief system and part of your family's belief system, you know, praying together is a great thing to do. Breathing really helps to calm the nervous system and to lower that stress and anxiety. And then I added in at the bottom here, gratitude, because I think that going along with that perspective of how we look at things, I think that there are some things that we can find gratitude for. You know, I know that there's this increased risk for all of our firefighters right now, but at the same time, I am grateful that my husband isn't going to lose his job. You know, I'm grateful that I can take that off the plate. You know, so looking for things that you can be grateful for, I think, are very important. Okay, so we also, I think this is another important one. We want to be good consumers of information. So what that means is we and I think most of us know this, not everything reported in the news is accurate. So we want to consider our source and use like those critical thinking skills and say, okay, is this valid? Does this make sense? You know, because there's a lot of stuff floating out out right now. And so we kind of want to, I call it like the rabbit hole, like be careful of going down the rabbit hole. Sometimes it's really common for us to feel when we're feeling really anxious about something, especially when there's a lot of unknown or a lot of questions about something. We think, okay, the more information that I get, the less anxious I'm going to feel. So if I can understand this, if I can understand everything about this event, then I won't feel as anxious. But it's actually the opposite that happens usually. We start going down that rabbit hole of trying to, you know, just we're reading about it, we're questioning it, it's just consuming us. We're talking about it, everything's revolving around it. All it does is actually increase our anxiety. So I think it's important to be informed, use valid sources, use our critical thinking skills to kind of filter out what we know is not accurate, and then at some point turn it off and take a break from it. The other thing we want to keep in mind too is just it's important to stay fluid and flexible, as we've all experienced over the last couple of weeks. I know for a while there it felt like every day was just completely changing, and that could be very overwhelming, and that's okay. So doing your best to just kind of stay flexible and fluid with it helps a lot as well. Okay, I know I talked about breathing. I just put this in here really quick because I think it's important. Obviously we all breathe, right? But there's a particular way that we breathe that's going to help calm the nervous system. And it's basically just breathing in through your nose and then holding it for a count. But the biggest part to breathing is you want to really focus on the exhale, because that's the part of the breath that actually calms those nervous systems. So if you want to breathe in for 3, then breathe out for 6, or you breathe in for 4, breathe out for 8. You basically just want to double your exhale. And then you want to do at least 3 in a row, because you do 1, you're like, oh, okay, but it takes several. It takes at least 3 in a row to really start to feel it calm you down. So just a little tip on that. Okay, other things we can do, our self-talk, what we say to ourselves is really important. So, tapping, I think for like the significant others, we're used to living with knowing that, our firefighters, there's an inherent risk to their job, right? It's not like my best friend whose husband is a photographer. There's not very many photographers, who get injured or die doing what they do, but there is with firefighting, and we understand that and we know that. And I think a lot of us do very well with compartmentalizing that and putting it where it needs to be. Like, we don't bury ourselves, our head in the sand about it, but we also recognize that we can't focus on this every single day because we have to function. So I think that like tapping into that inner resiliency and that self-talk that we already do, tapping back into that to help with this can be really valuable. I think that we already have a lot of those traits already. So maybe just looking at it in a different way and saying, okay, I can do this too. What I normally do, like, that's there. So let me apply it to this situation as well. And that goes along with also, again, just paying attention to what we can control, So I'm going to compartmentalize this, and I'm going to trust that my firefighter, which I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but, my firefighters trained and they're talking about how they're going to keep them safe, and they're used to risk, and they're used to doing everything they can to keep themselves safe. So I'm going to trust that that's still occurring. And if you have questions, then, you get those answers and you talk about it together. But it's really the same type of process that we're already used to doing. So if you, maybe just a different way to kind of look at that and tap into those skills and strengths that are already there. Okay, so managing stress in your relationships. I know that this can be a big one right now because this is so new and it is anxiety producing. The stress levels for a lot of homes are up, right? I mean, it's not just that risk of exposure to our firefighters, it's everything. It's everything I've been talking about. So taking care of yourself is probably one of the best things that you can do. We know that if we're not taking care of ourselves, we're not as effective in any role that we are, any of our roles, right? So we're not going to be as effective at being a partner, a parent, an employee, whatever these different roles are. I think being patient with yourself and others is really important. Again, recognizing none of us have a frame of reference for this. We've never lived through anything like this before. So keeping that in mind, and we're all learning this together. We're all trying to figure this out together and manage it together. Giving each other the benefit of the doubt, I think, is really important. I have found that in relationships, a little bit more like in fire relationships though, it's very easy to get caught up in our own like vision, like I call it like tunnel vision, like our own experience, our own, what we are personally going through. And sometimes it's really easy to forget that, you know, our partner is going through their own process. They're going through their own thing right now. So giving each other the benefit of the doubt, trying to see things from each other's perspective is really important, especially in a time like right now where there is increased stress. I think it's also important to not compare your relationship to others. I mean, well, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I know for me, like my social media time is like totally increased right now because I'm working from home and I'm not working quite as much as I was. So I have a lot more free time and not really going anywhere. And so what am I doing? Oh, I'm on Instagram. Oh, I'm on Facebook, you know, and so you're seeing what a lot of other people are doing. And, you know, I think it's important to not get too caught up into that and remember, like, you know, do what works for your relationship and try not to compare to others, even though it's easy to do. And I think remembering that you and your partner, you're on the same team, and we don't want to get caught up in that competition for pain with each other. This is something I've seen a lot with fire couples as well, you know, and I've experienced myself. You know, I remember having newborns or little kids who were sick all night, and my husband comes home and he's like, oh, I'm so tired. You know, I ran 4 calls, and I'm like, well, I was up all night with a sick kid, or I was up every 2 hours with the baby, you know, nursing her. And so it's really easy to kind of get up and get caught up into what I call the competing for pain. Oh, you know, and we can find that we start one-upping each other. Well, I got up this many times. Well, I did this. You know, we're on the same team. You're both tired, or you're both going through whatever it is you're going through, and it's okay, and they're both valid. You know, so keeping that in mind. When we keep that in mind, I think it helps keep us focused on being like what I call solution focused. So instead of like butting heads with this competition for like, who's more tired, who's more stressed, well, I've got this going on, well, I've got this going on, you start to come together and say, okay, this is what we together have going on. How are we going to work? How are we going to work together to find solutions? How are we going to help each other? You have needs that need to be met. I have needs that need to be met. What can we do together to make sure that we're both getting our needs met? I think when working with couples, I think it's important for couples to understand, like, there's no winner or loser. We as a couple either win together or we lose together. And hopefully that makes sense. If you have younger kids, you know, using bedtime or nap time to decompress, and this is either alone, like if your firefighter's at work, or if he's home, maybe using that time to spend together and communicate and build that connection with each other. Kind of talked about some of these already. Communicating, though, I think at the end of the day, communication is everything. When in the absence of communication, we tend to fill in the blanks with assumptions. We're not always right. And sometimes, you know, the other person, we can't read each other's minds. So we need to tell each other what we're thinking, what we're feeling. If we have questions about something, like, don't be afraid to ask. You know, communication builds intimacy. And I think when we're going through something like what we're currently going through, that intimacy is so much more, and that connection with each other is going to be even more important to get through this kind of emotional roller coaster that we're all on. Okay, hold on, I'm gonna drink some water. I'm not used to doing this much talking without stopping to like answer questions or let someone else jump in. So I feel like I'm like in a little like marathon right now. Okay, so pacing ourselves. You know, again, that's along the same lines of just being flexible, being patient, After doing something stressful, have some fun, like try to balance it out, do something for yourself, do something fun as a family. Talk about how you're feeling, talk about how you're feeling with your partner, your friends, your family. It's really important. And there's a lot to be said for that normalization that occurs when we realize a lot of other people are feeling the exact same way. And then staying positive and hopeful. We are going to get through it. Don't know exactly how long that's going to take, but we're going to. We're not going to be here forever. We talked about this. Oh, one little tip about the news also is, keeping in mind that our kids are also listening to what we are, to what's on the news, especially like the younger kids. So if we just have the news going 24/7, they're taking all that in as well. So kind of monitoring that, not just, for ourselves, but also for our kids. They're little sponges. Staying connected to your social network. So, calling your friends, FaceTiming, doing Zoom. My younger daughter and I are part of this like mother-daughter kind of charity philanthropy thing, and we haven't been able to meet in about a month or so. So we all did like a Zoom call, just like a 20-minute Zoom call last night, just to check in with each other, see how everyone's doing, so, scheduling things like that. Doing like an email group or chain with your friends where you're maybe sharing articles or videos, podcasts. I know I have one friend who we share like funny little videos and memes multiple times a day. And I like it. And I actually called her the other day and I said, I realize this is one of the main ways I'm coping. I said, and I love it. I love that she sends me stuff and I send her stuff. Because it's ensuring that there's at least a few times a day where I'm laughing at the really funny things that she's sending me. So just finding some ways to stay connected is really helpful. Playing online games, words with friends, things like that. Might require, I know a lot of people are doing like the virtual happy hour or, playing games and or like games where, virtual games and things, and it could be a fun way to get together and have like a set time, like, hey, let's get together at this time. So, so helping others. This is actually one thing that I noticed with my clients, and then also my friends, my personal friendships. The ones who I know who seem to be like really managing their stress really well, I've noticed that there seemed to be a common thread of at some point they're doing something for someone else. So for example, I have a friend who has older kids around my kids' ages, and they bought a bunch of rocks and they were painting them and they were putting like little like positive words and messages on them. And then they went to all the neighbors and were leaving them on the neighbors, by their doors. I have another friend who her and her daughters did a bunch of cards for a senior citizens home, nursing home. I have friends who are doing so much, like helping with the hospitals, right? They're sending messages to all the healthcare workers. They're buying bars and drinks and having them sent to the hospitals for the workers. So finding a way to help others really helps us deal as well. So, delivering groceries for maybe someone who can't get out on their own, things like that. And then if you have kids, getting your kids involved in that. And then the message that's sending to your kids about helping others is so strong as well. And it really does feel good to be able to help others. And it gives you that sense of you are controlling, like I have some sort of control in a situation that feels so uncontrollable. So, okay, so how do I know when I reach out for support? Basically, we just, as I mentioned in the beginning, it's if the anxiety and the stress start to really interfere with your daily functioning, meaning that you're finding it hard you're not sleeping, your appetite is off, you're having problems concentrating, you're forgetting things, just don't want to do anything, like that energy is really down, or maybe the energy is so high, you know, it could go either way. Energy is so high that you can't sleep, you can't sit still, you just feel like anxious all the time, or, you know, it's just off. Like you know what your baseline is for sleep, energy, appetite. If those things really are really off, plus, you know, you're wanting to isolate, you don't really want to talk to anybody, those are signs that maybe getting some additional support could be really beneficial for you. So some resources, you know, reaching out to your support system. Support system is amazing, and people who have a good support system tend to do better than those who don't. So a parent, a friend, it doesn't necessarily have to be a family member, you know, a friend, just anyone that you feel comfortable talking to, who you feel like you can trust. Your partner, if there's anyone else like in your fire family, you can reach out to. Clergy, your peer support, your peer support team. I know some departments, I think it's San Diego Fire is starting like a spousal peer support, which I think is pretty cool. So that, I have a feeling that may catch on, and we may start seeing more of that. But you know, reaching out to maybe some of the other partners in your department who are kind of going through the same things, your clergy, your pastor, someone from your church. And then of course, you know, there's always the counseling team if you feel like you need a little bit more than just a personal, you know, support system. You need a little bit more of a professional support. Feel free to reach out. We are all still working. Most of us, I think there might be a couple who still go into their office, but most of us are doing telehealth. So we're doing video sessions or phone sessions, whichever is more comfortable for the client. And I'll be honest, like I really was resistant to doing the telehealth. I don't like video. But I gotta say, it's so much better than I thought it was gonna be. I still prefer in person, of course, but the video is actually not bad. And I think my clients are realizing too, like, it's really not that bad. And like a lot of them have said, you know, it's better than nothing, you know? So if you feel that you need something to that, like a professional type support, please feel free to reach out to us. And the cool thing about telehealth, I will say, is it doesn't matter where you live, like you can have access to any one of us, right? Because you're not driving into our office. So that's kind of a positive thing for doing telehealth. Okay, so the counseling team did include this. What happens, just kind of a little, what happens after? So what happens if you are quarantined, or your partner is quarantined, your family is, you know, or what happens after the social distancing or this isolation? I think, you know, it's important to be prepared for a big mix of emotions. And one of those emotions is probably going to be relief. You know, if we are isolated because we were exposed or we tested positive, you know, there's going to be a lot of emotions involved in that too. Sadness, anger, you know, we may be dealing with how other people, you know, may be looking at us. Some people may be very supportive. Others might kind of look at us like, oh, like I don't want to be around you. So kind of one of the things we can do in that respect is, you know, asking our doctor all the questions about what it means and what it means for others, and then doing our best to educate ourselves so that we can educate them. And then again, you know, using your support system if you feel that you need it, using your personal support system, using one of us if you don't already have a therapist. So these are just some additional resources that have great articles about what we're talking about right now, and some trusted resources that you can, you know, go to their sites, and they've got some great stuff. So that's kind of the end of the PowerPoint. If we want to open it up now to just feel free to, I think that you all can unmute yourselves. Hold on, let me.
Hi, Nikki, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I was able to figure it out. It was user error.
Okay, good.
So thank you for hosting this, and thanks for the counseling team. But is there any family members on that we can help, you know, kind of answer questions about what the agency is doing to protect the employees. We'll be happy to answer some of that stuff for you guys. And I guess I can just kind of blanket it. I think the one thing that kind of brings me a little bit of comfort is knowing that being a county agency, we're the first ones to get all the information and we get all the updated stuff. So it's not like we're hearing it hearsay from the news or through the Nextdoor app or social media. Every day there's updates coming out from the fire department and the county, and we're pretty much the first ones to get that. So working for a county agency, that's definitely a benefit. And I think being flexible is the biggest thing, as we've seen in the last couple of weeks. Things constantly are changing, right? Because we're getting new and better information from the CDC and public health. So now we're wearing more PPE on calls. We've gone from wearing station uniforms to PT clothes in the station just to kind of decrease the chances of having contamination. We're doing health screening of all employees. So every day people are getting their temperatures checked, and we're answering certain questions to make sure people are healthy when they come to work. Our dispatch is doing an amazing job, screening calls and getting questions asked of the RP to make sure that our first responders are prepared when they go to the call and have the most information they have. And then there's a million people behind the scenes, working on task force to make sure we have enough PPE and what's the newest thing, and can we wear these certain kind of PPE, and are we going to have enough to make us last through this whole thing? So I think if you just kind of talk to your firefighters or your employees about what's going on, they can give you that information. I've been trying to share it with, like our auxiliary, the Wolves, and make sure that they're getting the information too, but the information's out there. So it's just, again, opening that communication line, staying positive, knowing that we are getting the most timely information, and again, being flexible, because every week and every day new stuff comes out that's better for us to better protect our people.
Thank you for that. I wanted to, so somebody asked if there was a way to get the PowerPoint for agencies that contract with the counseling team. And I would suggest contact, so we are recording this Zoom call. So I'm sure that we can get the recording to Ventura County, get it to you in case, people who weren't able to join in today, if they want to just watch the recording of it, that's, we can do that. I will, as far as the PowerPoint, I would ask Janine Motion, she's the director of our training department, if there's any way to share that. So let's see. Oh, and I also wanted to let everyone know, a colleague and I put together, it's like activities and a huge 2-page activity and resource list of different things that, different ideas that companies and websites are offering us right now, like, free streaming of classes, exercise classes, painting classes. I mean, we have 2 pages full of all these things. I have emailed it to Janine at the counseling team. So if, Nick, if you want to get a hold of her, she can forward that to you. And then maybe if anyone's interested, we can get that sent out to you also. And there's a big section of things for kids. So, okay, and Janine just said, if you want a copy of the PowerPoint or the resources that I'm talking about, she just gave her email address in the chat. So feel free to email her and she can get that out to you. But I'll ask her to send it to you too, Nick, just in case.
And then one other thing I just wanted to add is make sure that anybody who's on this conference call that's from Ventura County Fire, whether you're a firefighter, a dispatcher, a family member, the counseling team is free service for all you guys. So, if you need to reach out to me to get the information on how to contact them, we can do that. I've sent it out a bunch of times. I'll be happy to send it again. But the telehealth, whether you want to get a clinician that's close to where you live, it's a great service. It's free. And again, you get to talk to people that are similar to you, live the life, and understand what we're going through. So just know that's free to everybody that's on this conference call that works for Ventura County.
Thanks for, thank you for putting that in. I forgot. And I think it's, yeah, you get 10, I believe most of our contracts get 10 sessions. So you might, yeah, 10 sessions. Okay. And that's not 10 total. That's like 10 for individual, that's 10 for each individual family member and 10 like for couples. So it's a lot. So yes, please feel free to reach out and use us. We're here, and most of us have some sort of personal connection to first responders, and so we kind of, we have our clinical training, but we also have our personal experiences, and so we kind of get it from that personal aspect as well. So Okay,
Hi,
so
Nikki. I'm Brian McGrath, Ventura County Fire.
hi.
Hi. One thing I'd like to mention to everybody when we're having discussions with other firefighters or spouses, we need to be delicate with what we say and how we say it, and make sure we're saying the right terminology. If someone says that they're a positive, well, they're not positive for what? They went on a patient or they were around somebody that was potential. It's being aware of the things we're saying it and how we're saying it and in what context. Because if you think about, the old adage of telephone, telegraph, telefirefighter, it changes every time it gets said for the rumor mill. So just be very conscious of what the way that you're speaking and how you're talking about certain calls, certain individuals, and have a little, give a little bit for, okay, well, that's going to be rumor. I didn't hear it firsthand. Let's go to the source. And if you ever have any questions, contact your agency. For Ventura County Fire, you can call myself at the Public Information Office. You've got Nick is a great resource. There's a lot of different people you can call. Anybody on our cadre, reach out and ask those questions directly and don't spread the rumors.
Yeah, Brian, I think the biggest thing is being factual, right? So, I mean, having the facts and not guessing or thinking that the facts are what's going to guide you. And I think that's the biggest thing about like staying off the media and just kind of limiting it to an hour a day, because there's so much stuff out there that what's facts, what's hearsay, what's this or that. If you stick to the facts, which we're good at getting every day, that's going to help you stay positive. Because again, we're lucky out here. We're a little bit less densely populated. Our numbers aren't going as big. We started getting ahead of this stuff, almost 4 weeks ago with the task force. So we're doing a lot of good things here. And the nice thing is not only Ventura County Fire, it's the off area. So our dispatch dispatches everybody: Ventura City, Oxnard, Fed Fire, Fillmore. The sheriffs have got on board. So we have a good group among everybody, just communicating and making sure everybody's getting the same message. So stick to the facts, and that will guide you. Take the time, take that extra 5 to 10 minutes to get the facts before you say something that's not true, and it ends up spiraling into a rumor.
I think those are all really good pieces of information to be mindful of and keep in mind. I agree. I mean, there's so much misinformation and rumors and things going on right now that we want to be careful and mindful of not adding to that, especially when it comes to our fire families. So I think those are great. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for me or for any of the firefighters that are on board?
I have a funny quote, Nikki, because I know I've been watching myself because I can see myself on this stupid Zoom app, and it says, don't touch your face, right? That's what it's everybody. But I saw a quote from one of our peers, and it said, with all the stupid things that I've done in my life, if I die from touching my face, I'm going to be pissed. So try to find the humor in things, and we'll all get through this together.
Totally agree. Well, I want to say thank you so much for arranging this. I think that this is such a great thing for departments to do. I know that there's probably a lot of what I said is information that's already out there that's being shared just in websites or other clinicians, and which is great. And I think that the more we hear it, it really is better. It is good for us to hear it more than once and to hear it from different sources. But I think also, like I was talking with Nick a little earlier, I think that I think it's great that your department put this on, and it's I don't know. I think as a fire spouse, as a fire family, it sends a really positive message. As you're caring about us. You want to make sure that we're good. And I think that that's really beneficial. And so I appreciate you doing that. And thank you for inviting me to come in and be a guest and share some information with you. So.
Thanks for everything, Nikki. I appreciate it. It was awesome.
Okay. Well, thank you. So yeah, I mean, if everyone, mean, if everyone's good, then I mean, I don't want to take up time just to take up time. So, all right. Well, thank you guys.
Have a good day and thank you. And we'll get the recording and I'll send it out to everybody that couldn't attend.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Bye.